Welcome to Smoke Shop.
Let's get this party started, y'all. I'm going to not get sucked into the Yamaha DS7 right now. We're going to play with Mr. Hancock. Basically, I took Mr. Hancock to the store the other day, and there were two behaviors that occurred that caught my attention and concerned me. One of which was when this carburetor system is correctly set up, basically, when you press the gas, which this would be the equivalent of, if you can see this stepped lever right here, that's connected to your choke. When I press that, with it being cold as it is, it's not cold, but the engine is cold, that lever drops down. That's when you press the gas, this is what happens. When you release the gas, it sets the choke. Then you start your engine. When you start your engine, there's a bimetal coil, I believe is the correct term. There's a metal coil inside of here that heats up as the engine heats up and the carburetor heats up. Like an old school thermostat, basically it makes a change in the setting of the shaft that holds this stepped lever. As it heats up, it will allow, I'm going to do this manually, the throttle, when you tap it, you've heard me tap it at the beginning of the video, my arm's probably in the way. You tap it and it drops down because the shaft, like I said, that's adjusted by temperature is controlling where this stepped lever is. Basically, the reason that I'm explaining that is, theoretically, once your throttle drops down to that lower position, I'm not going to do it again, your engine is basically warmed up. The other day when I went to the store, I started it just like I just showed you, and I did not touch anything. And after just a few seconds of being at that high idle that's caused by the choke being on, the accelerator dropped down. I don't mean the actual pedal, I mean the idle speed dropped down, which meant that that choke had dropped out of position. Not a big deal in and of itself. It wasn't a particularly cold day or anything like that. But in my experience, it doesn't usually happen that quickly. When I actually drove, it seemed to hold an idle and everything like that at that particular moment. Once I backed out of the garage and closed the garage door, got on the road, basically by the time I got to the end of my road, which if you've watched the videos, you know it's not that long. It's a bumpy road, it's a terrible road, but we're not going to get into that. But by the time I got to the end of my road, I noticed that it did not seem to be holding an idle. Any old motorcycle, air-cooled especially, car, until they're really warmed up, if you don't make any adjustments, it may do that. Kind of a normal behavior. Accelerator was working fine, vroom vroom. So I hopped on the road and went down to Publix. Made it there no problem, but I definitely noticed that every time I decelerated, like pulling into the entrance, there's a three-way stop sign there. And I stopped, and sure enough, the engine stalled. Cranked right back up, no problem. Pulled around, same way I do in the Mr. Hancock Goes to the Store. Went around the back of the parking lot because I didn't want to be playing with pedestrians and stop signs and other cars if I've got an issue. So went around the back of the building And basically, as soon as I got around front, pulled into a parking space, let off the accelerator, and bam, it stalled again. Cranked right back up, no problem. So it's got no problem starting back up, but it's not holding an idle. Cranked it back up, drove it straight back home. Again, no issues. Pulling in, as soon as I let it off of the accelerator, it died again. Accelerator cable comes through here and goes into a holder right here. I, again, doubt you can see any of that, and I'm not going to pull you in for this explanation. But the reality is that I have another phone I could use for alternate footage like that. Be right back. I need to show you what I'm talking about. The throttle cable. By the way, I don't have a tiny hand like Sleeper Dude. What I do have is a witch finger, since it's Halloween. Except in my opinion, the witch finger looks a lot more like a goose with a green bill. Honk honk. Anyhow, that is my hand. That is where your throttle cable goes. Help me out here, Goosey. Honk honk. This is really kind of complicated to do through a camera. I understand why they all say that now. That is your actual accelerator cable. Oops, it went away. We're going to lose the goose finger, witch finger, whatever. So that is my the end of my accelerator cable. Now, I disconnected that the other day. But I didn't really have to use any tools to do that. So basically, I'm not sure if that may have moved on its own, creating the entire set issue that we have. So, today's mission is going to be to reset up this carburetor, get it going correctly. Basically, I kind of just got this thing going because, of course, it was exciting to get it running. And in my heart of hearts, I knew I was going to have to go through this entire car. We got the cavernous echo thing going again. I don't know if you're catching that. But if I'm going to keep it as a rolling restoration or a rolling refresh, I'll say. I don't like using the term restoration because I am not restoring this car right now. Who knows what the future holds? With all that being said, we're going to go through this carburetor and the carburetor setup. I'm not hearing any weird noises or anything, so we're not going to get into any of the valve train or anything. I'll give you a secret. I've already seen what our issue is, as I mentioned in the beginning, and now I'm focusing even more with the better light. This hose is a vacuum line. We have what looks to be weeping oil or fuel. It wouldn't be oil, it's fuel. But more importantly, we have huge cracks. And it's also rubbing on the alternator belt. I think I probably just did that because otherwise it would have been broken. But having it bent back that way, as a matter of fact, that's something good. I should totally bring you in for this. Utilizing these two books, we're going to go through and do a basic setup. I may need to go to the store to get some better hose. This is the line that I'm talking about. And as I had it bent back from trying to show you the accelerator cable, it exposed all those cracks. Well, if you're trying to form vacuum, you need a sealed system. The lack of clamps probably doesn't help any, but the cracks are not helping at all. And between the two, we obviously do not have a a good connection at all. And that could be a huge part of our running issue. So, what I need to do is get back into those manuals. That's an original, by the way. That's what they're supposed to look like, braided. But speaking of brittle, this one's going to be completely shot also. I'm not going to spend the money right now to go get original hoses. They are expensive, but I will get something comparable that will work just fine. And we're going to go through this setup, including the fuel system and all these vacuum lines, make sure they are hooked up correctly, start up the basic tune for this car again, go back through it, because I'm pretty sure it's correct, and most of our issue is going to be that loose accelerator cable and or these leaking vacuum lines. But it's not going to hurt me to walk through it real quick with you. We'll talk to you soon. I think I'm going to grab some lunch and hit the hardware store. Basically, I went and got some lunch, got some fuel line. The fuel line that I was after for the motorcycles was not going to work to replace the vacuum line that we need to replace. But I have some nice good thick wall that will. I just spent about 45 minutes trying to find the correct vacuum routing for the dual port vacuum advance on my distributor, which, as it turns out, I guess is pretty rare to actually run that. Strangely enough, it's not in any of the books that I have that I found. Where I did find it was just on type2.com in an old typed article. Real simple. Over the years, many a 71 to 74 Beetle and 71 bus with dual diaphragm distributors have graced my doors, and about half the time the vacuum lines are backwards. So here's the poop. First, take a look at your vacuum can. On the flat side of the can is a hose fitting for the larger 4.5 millimeter green hose, which is this. This is the retard side. Second, on the cone or rounded side of the can is a smaller hose fitting. This uses a 3.5 millimeter hose, usually black. This is the advanced side. Third, look at your 34 picked carburetor. The fitting on the left side of the carb is for the advanced side of your vacuum can. Connect it properly. So, this is not set up correctly. Anyway, I've looked at every resource I can possibly find, including the 2 books that I have and the entire internet, and really can't find a good explanation as to the proper vacuum routing for a dual port advanced distributor, vacuum advanced distributor. Near as I can tell from the research that I have done, I don't think this is even long enough to do what it's supposed to be. Maybe. There's supposed to be another tube up here somewhere that keeps fuel from doing what it's doing, but until I know better, yeah, this is worthless. Sorry. We're having some fun now, kids. Till I know better, I'm about to put this the way that not the way that it was. The way that it was incorrect from pretty much everything I can read. Trying to cut the ends off of this and hopefully get something viable. if I can't, then I'll use this new stuff. But I think this new stuff is actually too big for this part. As far as I can tell, this front port is supposed to go here. And there's actually supposed to be a little loop up here. And I'll have to look into that further, like I said. All I did was put it together the way I sort of found it, but as I've learned, a lot of this was thrown together by somebody and not necessarily correctly. So I have a couple different options here. I believe what I'm going to do is there's a port on below the carburetor on the actual intake. And from what I can tell, that's where this is actually supposed to be hooked up. This being the rear port on the distributor. It's not going to make it run right necessarily. It'll make it hard to perfect the tune if it's not correct, and especially when accelerating, it can make some issues occur. Right now I'm not, I wasn't going to cut it, but then I realized I was going to hit the exhaust if I don't. I'm going to see if I can route it in a way that I don't have to cut it. And I believe I have found that. Okay, so now we have no theoretically vacuum leaks, although that's an old hose. There's actually a huge vacuum leak right here, but we'll put this little stopper that was on the intake where I just hooked up the back hose to, as opposed to the front hose. Speaking of front hose, the front hose nipple is about to get this, which theoretically should block it off, maybe. Who knows? Who knows with the hose? I'm going to find a zip tie or a small hose clamp, which I know I don't have, so a zip tie it's going to be. I'm just thinking I may have a proper port cap, but even if I do, I don't know where it is, and we wasted enough time today trying to figure out how to route that vacuum line. Okay, well, we should have no vacuum leaks at this point. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to find a wrench that will fit this correctly. This is the, I guess it would be a ferrule that holds the accelerator pedal, or the accelerator cable rather. You can suddenly hear a bunch of background noise. It's raining. What do we do with our waka waka, waka waka? Needle nose pliers. So, with the choke completely off, the screw should be just lightly resting against the lowest point on that lever. I'm not sure what I've got going on there accelerator pedal wise, but what we're going to do is set this at its resting point, and I have the accelerator in there at its highest point. And if I can get this to go through there, which it's not for some reason. Don't know why. Why are we fighting today? There we go. Okay. So again, our accelerator is at its highest point, and I'm just going to give it just a little bit of slack there. I don't want it super tight. Now, we're going to tighten that set screw. Whoop. All right. Okay, so that should be all right now. You know, I came out here assuming that there was going to be a basic setup in here. And I don't know if there is. So, anyway, sorry, once again, distractions abound. We're going to start this motor up and see if we can get any type of idle out of it. Our basic setup should be fine still, because it was. Trying not to get carbon monoxide poisoning. Anyway, let's see what happens. Again, I'm not going to touch any accelerators or anything. Actually, I am to set that. So that's the choke is now set. Which would be, again, me putting the gas pedal down to the floor and then letting go. That's what would have happened. That's interesting. Oh, it's because we were pumping on the accelerator, so it's flooded. Again, I don't know if you can hear me. You can probably hear me now because I'm standing right by the phone. We're going to let that warm up for a little while. I'm going to turn the fan on. Alright, you hear how I just smoothed that a little bit? I'm going to go ahead and tap that accelerator. That just stepped it down about halfway. By the way, this is why a lot of people basically tune it without the choke. Okay, see, we're not idling. Yeah, I'm gonna turn the fan on. Just for now to make sure that you can hear me. So this is from, I think it's Rob and Dave's VW resource. after the engine is warmed up, before setting the volume control screw, which is the smaller screw, before we're going to adjust that, we're going to take the larger screw, which is the bypass screw. We're going to turn it out 2.5 full turns, which is the initial setting. So what we want to do again is we want to screw it in to where it's lightly seated. So we're going to do 2.5 full turns. 2.5 turns. So this panel is right there. This side, the flat, the point. Pay attention to how you're turning it. That is a half a turn. That is 1 full turn. 1.5. 2. 2.5. Okay, so that's 2.5 turns out on the larger screw. 2 all the way in and lightly seated on the smaller screw. Mind you, this is all powered right now, so don't touch any of that with your metal screwdriver. Try and get a relatively straight shot so you can feel what's going on. There we go. Half a turn, 1 turn. 1.5, 2 turns. 2.5 turns. Just out of curiosity, let's see if it'll start back up. I think we've got that at least dealt with. Now we'll go up front and play with the accelerator pedal. Well, there's only so much I can do as far as lighting. And I don't know how I'm going to get in here and do this without locking the camera. But let's see what we've got going on here. Oh boy. Contortionist mode, activate. So, I've got this spring to keep the accelerator from falling backwards. The thing is, I think it's too strong. So, this spring that I've got here is pretty ridiculous for what I'm using it for. But if I can get it out without hurting myself, I'll show you why I did it. Ooh, still got both eyes? Okay. So what happens sometimes is I go switch, to do a brake or whatever, and then that would happen. Now, of course, you can still accelerate using that, but it, it created a possibility of an unsafe situation. We'll just say that. And there is a spring for this, but it's pretty much broken. So that's not really useful at all. What we'd like to do is get it to where we're kind of attaching these two to each other. I'm not even sure how it's originally supposed to be set up. Let me get this spring that I made out of here. Someone's just gonna get hurt. Yeah, I just forced it in there. There we go. Okay, so that's now out of the picture. Now that I flooded the hell out of it. Because I could definitely do that. And that would make sure that the throttle always returns. But I gotta make sure there's something that keeps that pedal from falling back. Either way, that should do better than it was. So, I'm gonna get out now. Now that we've got the idle issue theoretically fixed, I think I'm going to work on getting all the lights in the speedometer and the fuel gauge to work, because I bought those light bulbs. I also have the seals for the parking lights, or turn signals rather, on the front. Excuse me. And that's a start. Let's go from there. I went inside to let the garage air out a little bit after we ran the car. The carbon monoxide, let that air out so that I could turn the fan back off. Anyhow, while I was in there, I thought about the accelerator pedal issue we've been having and remembered that I got one of these in the parts haul. Parts haul video, if you really want to watch it, is a really long, drawn out, boring video of me unboxing a bunch of parts that I got cheap. But it had this, which is a roller style accelerator pedal. Pretty much a direct swap out. I'll film it, but while we're set up to do this, let's knock these bulbs out real quick. The high beam bulb does illuminate, but that is the only one that I've ever seen work. So what we need to do is probably adjust your placement so that I can get in exactly where you are. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so if you can see it, I think that's the high beam. Or that's the high beam. Well, let's look at our handy label here. This says okay, so that is the fuel gauge light, theoretically, and the speedometer light. And that comes from here. Let's, the fact that both of those are not working, I'm going to put a meter on there, and let's see if they actually have any voltage. So we're going to use a meter, which is a way to find out what's constant power, by the way. So a pretty good ground is, well, we know the headlight circuit has a good ground, so we can go there. I don't know what this meter's doing. I don't know if you can see that meter. Probably not. But I was going to say, one of these circuits should be 12 volts or 11? 11 volts? Here's just a random wire laying on a switch. I don't know what that is. So yeah, this electrical system has been taken from 12 volt and made a 6 volt system. And like I said, there's a circuit missing, so some things have been moved around. I think I've got it basically back to where it's supposed to be, but I have not tested all the circuits. I may hook up the battery charger real quick, just because that does say 11 volts, and I'd like it to be 12 volts. I'm going to test it at the battery real quick. Yeah, we're reading 11 volts. Huh. So, it's 11 volts at the battery as well. If you watched the other videos, I have not checked the alternator circuit. Maybe we'll do that here in a little while as well, to see if this thing's charging. I know that the original 6 volt systems, you had to have the alternator or the generator light had to be illuminated. The bulb had to be good in order for the system to charge. I do not know if that's the same situation with the alternator system. But we'll find out. But either way, 11 volts, for a 12 volt system, that's not enough juice. Even though it's still starting, it doesn't take much to start a bug. So let's go ahead and get that charger hooked up. Alright. So we got our little 6 amp charger hooked up. That shouldn't affect this battery as much as it does the motorcycle battery. Let's see if we can get this to where you can actually see it. So, this is again a cheapo Harbor Freight clamp meter. I've had it for probably 10 years now. It's $13 or something. I'm not saying that everything is great, but if you're mindful of what you do, 13 bucks is not a bad investment for a meter, and if it doesn't work, bring it back until you get one that works. And like I said, it's lasted a long time. So at this point, we're going to go, anything metal, not painted, should be a ground on this car. 12 volts, 13, because it's on a charger right now. So we've got our voltage. Okay, so on these bulbs, the housing is the ground. And power. So our headlights are on. Our lights are on. Our lights are on. Your lights are on. The door is ajar. The door is ajar. The chair is against the wall. Oh boy. So we should have nothing here. I'm gonna say we have 6 volts. Okay. We have 10 volts. Let's find a better ground. Go back to this original ground I was using. I cleaned up the ground for the headlight to make sure that it worked right. It was out of sight. Got me light. 11. So we're almost to 12. Anyway, I'm going to stop playing that game. Seven. So what we have here basically is 10. We've got crappy connections. Old worn out connections. I don't know if you're going to be able to hear me over the rain. But either way, we have voltage up here. Oh, I know what part of the issue is going to be. Kids. There's a dimmer circuit probably that's turned down. Well, there is a dimmer circuit, but it's turned up. So, turned down for what? It's entertaining. So at this point, let's just pull this light bulb out. And put in one of these new ones. Yeah, I'm just trying to ground it and see if it'll light up, which it doesn't seem to be. So there's a different type of test light I could use to do this, or tester, but I have a better idea. Retractable test leads. This thing is 30 feet long. This is how I trace circuits on a car, especially if the engine's in the back and the electrical's up front. Basically all I'm going to do is take this ground that I know is good and connect it to this housing, which should make this light bulb light up. Alright, so it sort of is. There we go. Now let's see what happens when I plug it in there. Huh. Alright. So what we're going to have to do is clean up all this metal. Cavernous echo. But we know that if we get a good ground that circuit's going to work. Alright. So both of those bulbs are now known to be good. What we need to do is make sure that the base mount has a clean connection, because that is the ground. So basically this is, I don't know where the light is, there it is. It's like 320. I mean, the grit doesn't necessarily matter. This is just what I have the most of, frankly. Emery cloth. And I'm just going to take it and roll it up. I'm just going to roll it up. Yeah, I'm doing that on purpose. I'm being goofy. That should be about the right size now to stick into there. I think you can see that one better. Now I'm just going to let it kind of unroll, and now it's filling up the hole. Now I'm just going to spin it around and let it do its magic. I think you know how to use sandpaper. And again, we don't have to make it look pretty. We're just trying to get the metal where it can contact. Paper towel work and some, everybody's favorite brake clean or car cleaner. Something just to kind of moisten it. But that's going to evaporate because you don't want moisture in an electrical connection. And kind of wipe all that dust out of there. That'll help. So, what we also need to do is clean this side. This will probably help a lot. Yeah, this has got actual paint on it. I may need to get a little more aggressive with it. Oh no, we're shining up there. So, like I said, you just want to basically get some shiny showing. Stick it in there. Well, now, something that I should have told you from the beginning is you really shouldn't be working with live electricity, even though it's only 12 volts. The first step to doing something like this is to disconnect the battery. I'm being relatively careful, and I want to be able to show you when things work without having to disconnect and reconnect the battery a million times. Let's get you over there. The ticking is the timer on the charger. There's not a device or anything over here. I'm going to try and go in from the passenger window. I'd go in from the passenger door, but I can't open it right now. Ready for this? Boom! Illuminate. And the dimmer does work, by the way. So that's kind of cool. I have dash lights, gauge lights. Kind of neat. Another item off the list. Well guys, you're back under the hood again. I'm not sure where I left you, but we were talking about doing the roller pedal assembly or roller pedal install, but upon a little bit of research on that, I would have to disconnect the entire pedal assembly, which could get kind of complicated. It's not that big of a job, but I'm going to file it under if it ain't broke, don't fix it. What we have is working just fine. I just need to put a different type of spring in there. And that's not something I need to do on camera. If I do switch it over to the roller pedal, I will do that on camera. But I think what we're going to do is I'm going to pull these blades off of the windshield wipers. That's the word I was looking for. So that we don't scratch the windshield. And let's see if we can get the windshield wiper circuit working. Say that 3 times fast. And then we'll go from there. Drivability wise, I will probably dial in that carburetor tune a little bit better. I wanted to make sure I was done doing any accelerator adjustments. And I may even put a timing light on it. I haven't done that at all. Let's open the hood back up. The hood, the bonnet. What's it called on a bug? I might bump you. Hold on. Nope, you're good. So I actually have the correct assembly here for the washer, squirter, and everything. I'm not really worried about making that work right now, but I do want to be able to turn the motor on. I'm not worried about, when I say that, I mean the squirter. So I don't know at what point you guys left the chat, but the battery died on the other camera. So, again, it may sound completely different through this device, but this is the windshield washer switch, and I can tell you right now, just from the way that that shaft is sitting in there, that this switch is shot. Looks like there might be some burn holes in it. I think we need to source a new one of these. Now, that being said, I will also say that I've wondered what that switch is for. Well, more than likely, that is a three-way switch, which would probably, I'm already seeing what's going on here, possibly. That's what maybe this wire is. I'll have to trace out the circuit, but I think that's what's happened, is somebody has bypassed that actual switch and hooked up that little toggle switch. Anywho, I'm not going to bother right this second jumping out wires or anything to test that motor. Probably another one that's all over the place a little bit so far. But like I said, we need to order parts to do the washer switch. Well, we got lights in the dash bezel, the speedometer bezel, and the gauge cluster. The fuel gauge. That's a start at least. It's kind of a waste of a day, but I'm gonna grab something to eat and might come back out here in a little while. Hey guys, it's the next day. Wanted to say hi. Let's get back to it. We're gonna try and get these windshield washers and wipers, not the washers, just the wipers. Anywho, we're gonna try to get these windshield washers working. Wow. Oh, I can do that? Cool. Anyhow, the first thing that I noticed this morning when I got out my electrical stuff, it is absolutely essential that the D terminal on the alternator be connected to a functioning alternator warning light in the instrument cluster. If this light is missing or defective, the alternator will not charge the battery. Blah, blah, blah. So that answers that question without me having to test it. Now we're looking at some spaghetti. A lot of people are intimidated by this stuff. It's really just following lines. The symbols are usually explained. Now, don't get me wrong. They can get a lot more complicated than this. But a Volkswagen Beetle or a lot of motorcycles, stuff like that are pretty simple, especially pre-computer stuff. Once you start involving computers, there's a whole lot more sensors and stuff like that. But anyway, what we're going to try and do is, without casting too many shadows, I mean that literally, not figuratively, this is our windshield washer wiper circuit. I'm not going to try and do this with one hand and explain it to you, but basically what we're going to do there, this is the motor and this is the switch. What we're going to try and do is figure out where the power is, because there's going to be power going into the switch, and then there's going to be power going to what looks to be 3 different circuits. I'll have to figure out what it is. I know they're going to be at least 2 speeds. So what the switch is going to do is tell the motor what speed it needs to turn on at. And what we're going to try to do is see if that switch we found in the under the dashboard, that 3-position switch, if that works, then theoretically I should be able to get a low speed and a high speed wiper functioning. Then we'll order the actual correct switch and go from there. Once again, I'm not going to change anything permanently. I should be able to just tie it into a different circuit and tie it back the other way. So, like I said, we're not going to sit here. I'm not going to teach you how to read a schematic right now. I'm just going to figure it out, and then we'll go play under the hood. Bonnet. Whatever. Hey guys, I found a diagram of exactly what I need to do. This will be really handy. Activate magnification device. So, ouch, that didn't hurt. Oh, I'm lying. He doesn't have the colors labeled. Dang it. I have no way of knowing. 53 and 53B are fast and slow. So B is slow. Okay. And 53A is power. So 53, we decided, is fast. So theoretically, this is our fast circuit. Up, or towards the driver, rather. Oh, these are really weird terminals. But anyway, we can cheat them maybe? I don't know. These are screw-on terminals. I don't know who the heck put this switch in here. But anyway, so that sure does look like it should be a ground because it's black. Oh, all the power is black on this car. Duh. Alright, well, I know one way I could do it. Kids, don't try this at home. You know that this is 12 volts. So even though this wire is black, it is now hot. 12 volts hot. Theoretically, this should make something happen. Oh yeah. I would say that's slow though. My theory would be we'll have to. Well, I think I have another switch for that. Okay. So that's the opposite of what we thought it was. But that's all right. Cavernous echo, echo, echo. So, Black with a yellow stripe, is the high speed. And plain black is the low speed. Thank you for your cooperation. We are now going to disconnect battery power. Power. I'll be right back. I'm going to go find a toggle switch. I believe I have one. If not, I'll find the correct term. Yeah, I don't want to. We'll figure this out. I'll be right back. So, without dragging on too much, basically the switch that's in there has screw-on terminals. The original wiring has spade terminals, just slide on. In the continuing effort to not do anything to take away from the original car, I'm going to stay away from the factory wiring and leave it basically hooked up at the switch. And I'm going to wire up this switch, which is not the switch that's in there. Basically the same thing, but this is a pretty heavy duty switch. Metal housing and all that, and that is a plastic housing switch. I haven't looked at the ratings or anything like that, but it makes me feel a little bit better if I go with the bigger switch. The reasoning for that is, realistically, I should probably be doing this through a relay. However, what we're doing here is kind of proof of theory, and kind of an in case of emergency thing. I have no plans of driving this car in the rain right now. If we were to take it to the store or something like that and get caught in a rainstorm, it would be nice to have windshield wipers. I have, I have many ends of trailer harnesses, and so I was going to use some separate wire, and then I'm like, this has 4 conductors. It's not a very long run. I may need to use some of the red wire to get power from the fuse block. And we'll use 2 of these circuits. How about we use green and yellow? Why? Because that's what I decided I wanted to use. So what we're going to do is, we're going to put, I don't even need those. A ring terminal on one end so that we can attach to the switch, and a spade terminal on the other end so that we can attach to the motor on both of these. And then we'll make a power wire with the red, which will be also a ring terminal on one side and a spade terminal on the other side. If it's going to give it to me. Leverage. Okay, it doesn't matter. This is another fuse block off the other out of the parts hall. This allows me to go on one post and get two. Then I can hook up what was originally on that post and the circuit that I need. So another thing I was thinking about the other day, I made a comment about people always going straight to power tools. I often wonder how many people just strip out screws going, cross thread more importantly. Just going straight to the power tools. Because if you're not mindful of getting that thread started correctly and then you just apply a bunch of torque to it, you could screw it up in the bat of an eye. So, I'm going to take this screw or this switch out and put that one in place. So that is a pretty tiny retainer. What should be on there is that, or at least some sort of a washer. I mean, that retainer's bigger, but also that plate. So anyhow, we're just gonna stick that in the hole. I could bring you in there, but I don't really need to, I don't think. So this is the circuit that we want to get our power from. Basically all we're doing is adding another spade. So now that was the original circuit that was hooked up. It has power. And then when I hook up this, our circuit will have power. Power. Now then, this was hooked up, or should be hooked up to that. And then we're going to just disconnect those. For now, what I'm going to do is hook up our circuit . Yay! If you look at that, you should be able to see that's low, and that's high. So, we've got the idle issue cleared up. We have dash lights on the speedometer and the gas gauge, which is pretty much all that illuminates on the dash. And we have at least a temporary working wiper motor system. I have to get blades, but then we'll actually show it working, I guess. The other thing is I think I mentioned there's a terminal for the parking of the wipers, which is again what lets your motor go back to the stopped position, as opposed to stopping in the middle of your windshield. We will have to go through and look into that a little bit more if we're going to actually use the wipers without replacing the switch. It's not a huge priority for me to order that switch. I think it's like 40 or 50 bucks. But anyway, that's probably going to be about it for this video as far as Mr. Hancock. Quick check real quick on the subscriber number. It went up a bunch, or a fair amount, and then kind of leveled out. But we're at 121 as of this video. Once again, those of you that are watching, thanks for watching. Go ahead and click that subscribe button, please, because it helps. I'm on a mission to monetize, and the only way I'm going to do that is with 1,000 subscribers. So keep watching, share, like, subscribe. That's about it. I will talk to you next time. Going for a Sunday video. Sunday and Wednesday is what we're kind of trying to dial in. We, the royal we, of course. That's it. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.